AVibe, ты на канале AVibe, я ваш сенсей, и сегодня мы наконец-то добрались до разбора вселенной BTS от xCeleste. У меня есть свои предположения, о них я уже высказывался в предыдущих видео, тут сейчас будут всплывашки, залетай, смотри. И касаемо моих последних мыслей в видео, там где был карточный домик и ответы, я предположил, что за рулем был либо РМ, либо Джин. Вот. Я посидел, подумал, сопоставил и пришел к выводу, что это все-таки, скорее всего, был Джин, потому что никого, кроме него, за рулем не показывали. И в клипе Answer их было двое. И один уже был в костюме, как он был на свидании, а второй был под дождем, как будто там, короче, их было двое. Скорее всего, это был он. И еще по поводу Джина, когда он ехал на свидание, что-то у него триггернуло, и у всех как будто все пошло наперекосяк. Все стало плохо. Возможно, это как-то тоже повлияло. Как бы то ни было, сейчас посмотрим разбор, узнаем много нового, надеюсь, и убедимся в своих же догадках. Вот. Собственно, спасибо нашим бустерам, нашим модераторам, нашим фейвичкам, чатику, всем, кто комментировал. Большое вам спасибо за поддержку. Я это очень ценю, люблю и уважаю. А мы, собственно, начинаем. Поехали.
You unlock this door with the key of imagination. Beyond it is another dimension. A dimension of sound, a dimension of sight, a dimension of mind. You're moving into a land of both shadow and substance, of things and ideas. You've just crossed over into the Bangtan universe.
И я в ней уже 8-й видос.
So today I'll be summarizing the Bangtan universe. Remember that this is just a storyline and not real-life events. This was all created by Big Hit themselves. All this information was gathered from the notes, Save Me webtoon, music videos, and clips.
Да, я уже говорил, что есть множество записок, которых я не читал. Я строил догадки только на основе клипов, поэтому тут сейчас будет новая информация. Вы и так все это знаете.
Let's start at the beginning where the boys first met. March 2nd, year 19. The boys were late for school, and as punishment, they were all sent to clean a storage room. Through this event, they all became close friends and made this storage classroom their own hideout. They began to create a lot of happy moments together. June 12, year 19. All the boys decided to ditch school to go to the beach, and while they were at the beach, Hosok suggested to visit a rock that was 3.5 kilometers away.
А это ж тоже было, видимо, в каких-то клипах. То есть этого я не видел.
Got to the location only to realize that the rock was no longer there. It was under construction for a seawall. But then they began to yell out their dreams over the loud sounds of the drill. This was when they took the first Polaroid picture at the beach.
Ага.
Time went on, their own hardships began to tear them apart. On May, year 20, Namjoon decided to move to the countryside with his brother, mother, and ill father. He was about to write a letter to the boys, but instead, he fogged up the window in their hideout and wrote, "We must survive." And then Namjoon left without saying anything to the boys. Namjoon has always lived in poverty. Him and his family would struggle to come up with money for his father's hospital bills. He did his best to earn money from doing a bunch of part-time jobs. The boys always looked up to him because of how responsible he was, but he felt the pressure. Taehyung looked up to Namjoon a lot. When he was young, his mother left him and his older sister behind. Both him and his sister grew up getting abused.
Ага, все-таки это был отец. Не очень. Окей. Говорю, про Рема так мало было какой-то информации вообще. Но тут его более раскрыли.
Abused by their alcoholic father. Since Taehyung doesn't open up about his feelings and hardships, the boys don't know what he's going through. June 11, year 20. Seokjin was forced by the principal to reveal their hideout. The principal threatened to tell Seokjin's father about how he was a bad student. A teacher walked into their hideout while Jungkook and Yoongi were playing the piano.
Чангук и Шуга. Опять они вместе.
The teacher came up and slapped Jungkook. Yoongi became defensive and pushed the teacher. He ended up getting expelled from school, and Jungkook blames himself for what happened. Seokjin lived in a wealthy family. When his mother passed away, his father sent him to the US to live with his grandmothers. His father has always been strict and cold towards him. Seokjin just wanted to make his family proud. September 15, year 20. Hoseok and Jimin were at the bus stop when Jimin
И они вместе. Пока все идет туда, куда я и думал.
ended up having a seizure. He was brought to the hospital.
Стоять что?
Stop when Jimin
Когда у Чимина случился
ended
приступ.
up having a seizure. He was brought to the hospital. Hoseok wanted to stay by his side, but Jimin's mother turned him away. When Hoseok was about 6 or 7 years old,
Дала батончик. Вот почему он сникерс. Вот почему были шоколадок много. Ну, про мать я угадал.
his mother brought him to a carnival and gave him a chocolate bar. She told him to close his eyes and count to 10. When he opened his eyes, she was gone.
Ну, это очень жестко. Это очень жестко.
She abandoned him, and he ended up living in an orphanage for 10 years. Through this event, Hoseok developed narcolepsy, or at least that's what he says.
Нарколепсия. А у меня это было написано как синдром Пелхаделина. Если я правильно выписал.
Theory. Hoseok actually doesn't have narcolepsy, but a disorder called Munchausen's syndrome.
Мюнхгаузена.
It's a mental disorder in which a person repeatedly or deliberately acts as if he or she has a physical or mental illness when he or she is not really sick. September 28, year 20. Jimin is still in the hospital, and today was a special day for him. He lied for the first time and told the doctors
Вот лай, ложь, камера. Так, камера и картина была.
that he didn't remember a thing. When Jimin was about 8 years old, an incident at the flowering laboratorium scarred him for life. Ever since this incident, he began to have seizures, and his parents would keep bringing him to all these hospitals. He ended up transferring to 5 different schools because of this. Theory. Jimin witnessed a little kid's murder at the flowering laboratorium. There was a 5-year-old kid whose last name was Choi. His father's company went bankrupt and men were chasing after him. The men must have brought him to the flowering laboratorium, and Jimin witnessed them killing him. Jimin ended up running away. Now, this little kid named Choi is also linked to Seokjin. He was in the same class when 2 men tried to come in and take him. Seokjin saved the boy and brought him over to his house to hide, but then the men came over there. Seokjin's father let them in and stopped Seokjin from helping the boy.
Ай-яй-яй. Ай-яй-яй, как плохо-то.
September 30, year 20. Jungkook would go to their secret hideout every day in hopes of one day seeing them all gather together again. In the end, they didn't. It was just Hoseok and Jungkook. Jungkook relied on the boys a lot. His father left him when he was 7, so he lived with his mother, stepfather, and stepbrother. Now he would get abused by his stepbrother while his stepfather and mother just watched and did nothing. So his family were the boys, who were now falling apart. He was very close to Yoongi, and they were the ones who would always go to the hideout to play the piano together. Yoongi has always loved making music, but when he was about 15 years old, his
Вот почему огонь. Да, все-таки в Fake Love это были все-таки страхи. Он боялся огня, была комната в огне. Комната в огне, why? Вот он боится огня. Why, жестко.
His house caught on fire with his mother still inside. She passed away. She was the reason why Yoongi started to play the piano, because she used to play it herself. Him and his father didn't have a good relationship, and it seems as if his father didn't want him to continue making music anymore. Theory: Yoongi's mom was the one who
Твою мать. Самоубийство. Блин, все мрачнее и мрачнее.
started the fire to commit suicide. Now the story goes on. Namjoon left for the countryside without telling anyone, but ends up coming back after over a year and lives in a container. Seokjin transferred to a school in Los Angeles without a word. Taehyung's whereabouts were always unknown. Yoongi never showed up after being expelled from school. Jimin never came back to school after going to the hospital. Hoseok was now working a part-time job at a burger joint, and sometimes he would see Jungkook in his school uniform. April 11, year 22. Seokjin finally came back
Так прикольно, какой у них большой временной был промежуток. На столько лет. Прикольно.
to Korea after 2 years and 10 months. He drove to a gas station and
Вот тот момент. Тогда он ему передал зажигалку.
spotted Namjoon working there. He decides not to say hi though and ended up driving away. May 22nd, year 22. Seokjin begins to wonder what the other boys were doing now. He decides to go back to the gas station to visit Namjoon. But when he got there, he found out that Namjoon ended up going to jail. He got his phone number and went to visit him.
Я так понимаю, это когда их забрали с Тэхёном.
Namjoon revealed that he got into jail after getting into a fight with a customer. Hoseok was in the hospital after a bad accident.
Он все-таки...
He didn't know where Taehyung and Jimin were, and that both Jungkook and Yoongi
И Чонгук, и Юнги мертвы. Так, стоп. Еще раз.
revealed that he got into jail after getting into a fight with a customer. Hoseok was in the hospital after a bad
Хасок в госпитале. Это, видимо, после таблеток.
accident. He didn't know where Taehyung and Jimin were, and that
Не знал, где Тэхён и Чимин. Окей, но рассказал, что Чонгук и Юнги мертвы. Вообще-то это не клеится. Этого даже нигде не показали. Ну, из того, что я видел.
both Jungkook and Yoongi were dead. Seokjin was heading out of the police office when he saw Taehyung outside of the entrance. He was tied up and convicted of murder. Taehyung murdered his father and was going to jail. Seokjin went back to the beach they once visited back in high school. Where did it all go wrong? he asked himself. Then a voice spoke to him. If you could turn back time, do you believe you can straighten out the errors and mistakes and save everyone? He woke up and it was April 11 again. He thought it was all a dream and continued his day like nothing had happened. He went to the gas station, saw Namjoon, then again decided not to say hi. And he began to drive through an alley when a body landed
Это был Чунгук.
on the hood of his car. Then he realized it was Jungkook. His heart begins to beat fast and everything shattered like a mirror around him. And it was April 11 again. He kept thinking everything was a dream, and so the same things happened again. He went to the gas station, didn't say hi to Namjoon, and this time he was
У него день сурка типа какой-то был.
walking down
Или он сейчас просто будет видеть каждое происшествие.
the alley when Jungkook's body dropped behind him. Everything shattered, and a voice spoke to him again.
Вот почему Чон... То есть, что бы он ни сделал, Чонгук все равно умирает. Как это у нас вяжется? Пока тяжело вяжется.
You won't make it out here alone in this entangled destiny. Here's how to remember the loop. Once you open your eyes. Now, he began to see fragments of the previous timelines he was in. Seokjin finally realized that he's been going back in time. Now, things get super complicated during this journey. He begins to find out how each of the boys get in trouble and how they die. But every time he traveled back in time, a few things would change, and that's because of the butterfly effect.
У меня была мысль про эффект бабочки, я ее говорил вроде в Butterfly.
Butterfly effect, a part of the chaos theory that states that one small change in a situation can drastically change the outcome of an event. Now, I personally recommend you reading the Save Me webtoon for a more detailed story because it gets super complicated because he travels back so many times in order to save everyone.
Да, все-таки моя версия про друзей, она вот и тут есть. Не только из-за девушки, а из-за друзей тоже.
So it's a mess. For now, I'll give you the order of events for each member along with their reasons. On April 11, year 22, Namjoon gets into a fight with a customer at the gas station. This event caused him to be sent to prison. He's been dealing with rude customers all the time, but this time he had enough. And you could say he was tired of being looked down on. Later that night on
А вот этот момент. Вот он, наверное, А я еще говорю, какой красивый кадр был. Он тут упал. Вая.
April 11, Jungkook falls off the building of a construction site and dies. He no longer stayed in contact with the boys, and he felt like his family didn't care. Quote, "That gave me the idea that I could die if I just took one more step. But would death bring the end of anything? No one would be sad if I was not around anyways." May 2nd, year 22. Yoongi burns himself in a motel
Жесть.
or hotel. The location keeps changing every time. There's like 3 different hotels. But he also tries to burn himself on April 29 and May 10 during different timelines because of the butterfly effect.
Его спасли.
Now, Yoongi would always go around town drunk. He kept his distance from everyone he cared about because he felt like he would always hurt them. He thought it was better to just end the pain. May 10, year 22. Hosuk falls down and hits his head while walking on a bridge. And on May 12, year 22, now he was at the hospital for a checkup after hitting his head.
Все-таки не от таблеток. Ой.
From having narcolepsy. And he thought he saw his mother and tried to chase her down the stairs, but ended up slipping. May 12, year 22. Jimin tries to drown himself in the bathtub at the hospital. Now, Jimin's been stuck in the hospital for years. His mother wouldn't let him out because they were ashamed of his sickness, and he just wanted to be free. May 20, year 22. Taehyung murdered his father and went to jail. He came home to his father beating up his sister, and without thinking, he broke open an alcohol bottle and used it to stab his father. May 22nd, year 22. Taehyung ends up jumping off the viewing platform by the ocean in front of the boys in a different timeline. Seokjin discovered all these events one at a time after multiple failures, multiple attempts. It was just such a mess. But these are solutions he found during the Save Me webtoon. April 11. He gets to Namjoon at the gas station before he gets into a fight, then rushes over to Jungkook at the construction site to stop him. May 2nd. He then has to figure out which building Yoongi will start a fire in and bust in to save him because Yoongi would choose like 3 different buildings all the time. May 10. He catches Hosuk from falling on the bridge. Then he kidnaps Jimin from the hospital. After so many tries, Seokjin finally gathered everyone together. They all met up at Namjoon's container place and celebrated. It seemed as if everyone was happy, but then Seokjin let his guard down. He totally forgot about Taehyung stabbing his father. He traveled back in time again, and this time he decided to give Taehyung a ride, hoping to get something out of him. As soon as he dropped him at his home, they heard screams from his place. Taehyung
Не дай бог он сестру убил.
darted towards his place as Seokjin realized that talking to him was probably not enough. He chased after him and came into the room while he was beating up his dad. Seokjin tried to stop him, but instead, he ended up getting stabbed instead. April 11 again. This was when Seokjin realized that he can't save everyone on his own. Theory. In the next season of the webtoon, we're still going to go through so
Там еще были сезоны.
many failures, such as Taehyung jumping off the platform by the ocean, and also Namjoon potentially burning himself in his container. This was actually part of
А вот это ж было в каком-то его сольнике РМ вроде.
Taehyung's dreams, which I forgot to mention. Taehyung has these nightmares of the past timelines. He thinks they're all a dream, but these things actually happened. Now, we're still trying to figure out though if these dreams are of the past timeline or can he see the future. But anyways, I'll give you my theory as to how each member will be saved. In the notes, Seokjin decides to keep a distance from the other boys and leave hints and clues behind for them to find. You'll understand what I mean in just a second.
Вот пока все мои догадки, они вообще идут мимо. Мимо всего. Вообще. До сих пор, кто был за рулем, так и не сказали.
So Seokjin goes to the gas station to save Namjoon. After that, I don't know what exactly Seokjin does, but Hosuk ends up contacting all the boys to invite them over to Namjoon's container house, which is how Yoongi ended up calling Jungkook's phone before he was about to fall off the building. Now, in order to save Yoongi, Seokjin uses Jungkook. Taehyung actually spotted Seokjin in the act of helping. He sent Jungkook to visit Yoongi at his workroom, which ended with Yoongi running out and running to the motel/hotel. Seokjin left clues in front of the building entrance in order to help Jungkook find Yoongi. Jungkook makes it to the motel and saves Yoongi from the fire. And instead of Seokjin saving Hoseok from falling on the bridge and hitting his head, he lets that happen. Why? So Jimin can meet Hoseok. So Hoseok ends up in the bed next to Jimin at the hospital. When Hoseok was about to fall down the stairs after chasing who he thought was his mother, Jimin was there too.
Вот я помню этот момент. Все-таки они тоже, видите, они вместе идут. Как и Юнги с Чонгуком.
To catch him. Since Hoseok didn't fall and get hurt again, he was released from the hospital. Hoseok and the boys went back to kidnap Jimin. Before leaving, they had a little party in the hospital lounge with snacks and soda. A nurse ends up catching them and they all ran out of the exit together. Seokjin then used Hoseok to save Taehyung. Hoseok dropped Taehyung home, and just when he was about to leave, Seokjin called him over the phone and asked him to call Taehyung. This made him go into Taehyung's house just before the fight was about to happen. May 22nd, year 22. This is a day that Seokjin couldn't get past, and finally he was able to celebrate with everyone being alive. Now they all went back to the ocean where they made their wishes back in high school. Everything was all happy, or at least you thought. Now, something must have happened because Taehyung became super sensitive. Now, I don't know if it's because he overheard Namjoon's conversation over the phone and thought he was talking about him, but Namjoon was actually talking about his younger brother, or maybe a mixture of Taehyung already suspecting that Seokjin was hiding something.
Вот та фраза Хён. Что ты еще от нас скрываешь? Вот это.
But anyways, they were at a place by the ocean when Seokjin was about to confess. He said he had something to tell everyone, and it's something he should have said a long time ago when they were back in high school. Now, Taehyung ends up interrupting him by saying, when you ratted on us to the principal, or when Yoongi got kicked out of school because of that, then that's when the famous line came in. The whole, Seokjin, is that all? Aren't you hiding something from us? Now, Namjoon tries to calm him down, but then he said, what is all the fuss about being together? What are we to each other? We are all alone at the end. That's when Seokjin punched him and a fight broke out. In the end, Seokjin must have went back into the past again. But in another timeline, Seokjin leaves before all this happens. So when the boys got to the ocean by the observation tower, Seokjin climbs it. But then Taehyung follows after him. And after a while, Seokjin climbs back down, got into his car, and drove off, leaving the boys with no ride. Later the same night, Jungkook got hit by a car.
Наконец-то этот момент. Я его так долго ждал. Давай, рви.
Theory. I believe it was Seokjin. Now there are clues in the notes pointing to him, especially with Jungkook being suspicious of Seokjin that night, and we'll wait.
Хорошо, а зачем? То есть ты бегал по таймлайнам, их всех спасал, а теперь ты хочешь его убить? Сбить? Зачем?
Wait and see though. After the day, May 22nd, they all fell apart and didn't contact each other much. This is when the highlight reels come in. Hoseok was the first person who heard about
вот этот момент с девушками. Вот сейчас самое интересное будет для меня.
Jungkook's car accident. He was working at the burger joint when Jungkook's classmates came in and talked about the incident. Hoseok and Jimin came to visit him after he was unconscious for 10 days, and they were upset that he didn't contact them immediately. Taehyung rushed to the hospital, but when he got there, he heard Namjoon and Seokjin talking, and he couldn't bring himself to go in. Jungkook ends up meeting a girl at the hospital who helped him stay positive during his recovery. Yoongi was making music again, and with the help of a girl who played the guitar. She was giving him free solo performances at school and hospitals, and he was supposed to join her at the hospital the next
Он должен был выступать в больнице вместе с ней. То есть из-за того, что она выступала одна, ты психанул?
day. Ever since he got addicted to his work again, he would lose sense of time. He wouldn't answer phone calls or check his messages. Finally, he charged his phone, but then his phone rang. And it was a phone call from Jimin. Jimin told him about Jungkook's car accident the night they all came back from the beach. So Yoongi went crazy. He made it to the hospital, but he couldn't bring himself to go in. He felt like all of this was his fault. Jungkook went outside.
Так ты Ладно, окей.
With the girl he met at the hospital. They were hanging out, sitting on a bench, and he began to sketch until he heard a familiar song. Now, it was a song that Yoongi would play during high school. He looked over and it was the girl with the guitar. He got closer and noticed a lighter hanging on her guitar with the initials YK. Taehyung is now all alone. He catches a girl stealing at a convenience store.
Я думал, это была его сестра, это просто была рандомная девушка. Ну ладно.
And they run into each other a couple more times and ends up basically becoming friends. They spent about a month together until one day, they were spraying graffiti at the bus station Namjoon usually stops at. And the cops began to chase after them until they were cornered. Taehyung ends up surrendering, and then after being released, the girl was nowhere to be found. Jimin ends up going back home after they returned from the beach. After he ran away from the hospital, he lived with Hosuk. Now it was time to go back. His mother ended up forcing him to join an academy, and he also decided that he wanted to dance, so he joined Hosuk's Just Dance class. During dance practice, Jimin and Hosuk's friend collided. Instead of him reacting to the girl getting hurt, he ends up running into the bathroom to wash the blood off his arm in a panic. Now this reminded him of what happened at the
Что с ним было? Так, еще раз.
Dance class. During dance practice, Jimin and Hosuk's friend collided. Instead of him reacting to the girl getting hurt, he ends up running into the bathroom to wash the blood off his arm in a panic. Now this reminded him of what happened at the flowering laboratorium. And as soon as he realized what had happened, he ran after Hosuk and the girl with an umbrella to help out, but stopped and turned back around. Hosuk carried the girl in the rain to the hospital. In the process, he ended up hurting his ankle. They made it to the hospital and the doctor told him that she just had a mild concussion. Hosuk discovers a plane ticket to the US in her backpack though. He realized that she had passed the overseas dance team audition. She became conscious and was ready to go home. When they were at the entrance, she was about to tell him about her going to the US, but instead, Hosuk avoided it and made an excuse to get an umbrella. Namjoon becomes interested in a girl he's been seeing every day for a month. They would take the same bus to study in the same library before he'd go to work at night. Now, he's never spoken a word to her, but began to wonder what she does and what kind of things she's been enduring. It's probably because she reminded him of himself. He got her a hair tie but ended up leaving it on her backpack when she was asleep on the bus. Eventually, each of the boys begin to rediscover themselves and realize they want to become a better person. Taehyung no longer wanted to be the same and wanted to protect his sister
Свою сестру и своего отца? Wow.
and father his family. Hosuk decided to leave town and was gone for a while to heal his injured foot. During that time, he helped out a performance group and even toured with them for a little bit. They asked him to officially join their group, but then he realized he needed to go back home. And so he finally comes back to congratulate his friend for going overseas. Yoongi ended up losing the guitar girl, but even though he's given up on music countless of times, he'd always start music again. And this time, he didn't want to run away from it anymore. Jimin continued to dance and would practice by himself every night. He wanted to commit to something and prove that he was good at it. Namjoon thought back to his high school years. Everything he had given up on, he wanted to start it again. Jungkook was the only one who seemed to be off, especially after the car accident. Now, he was just trying to figure out what happened that night. Now, all the boys planned on meeting up for the yearly fireworks on August 30, year 22. It was Hoseok's idea to get everyone together, and after he returned from taking a break, their group chat started buzzing again. Now there's Seokjin. In July, Seokjin saw a girl drop her diary while crossing the railroad tracks. In that diary was her wish list of things to do. He ends up meeting up with her and doing everything she's been wanting to do, but then he never told her that he had her diary. One of the things on her wish list was Smeraldo
Цветок, вот он. Вот он подъехал.
flowers. Seokjin was able to find a shop he could order through, but they wouldn't be able to get a hold of it until August 30. Seokjin was thinking of confessing his love for her with the flowers while the fireworks bursted in the sky. That was his plan. But, of course, that's not what happened. Seokjin was able to receive the bouquet of Smeraldo flowers from the delivery truck.
Так, момент истины. Кто был за рулем?
He discovered that there was no card in the bouquet and immediately called the owner. Ah, I'll make a U-turn now, the light just changed.
Блин. Вообще неоднозначно.
That's what the owner said, but before the owner finished his sentence, the girl came into view and began to walk towards him across the road. Then, bam! She got hit by the truck. He stood there helplessly, then heard a mirror crack. Theory: Seokjin travels back again! Now, I don't know when he travels back to, since the only date we know is April 11, but dang, that is far. So he must have traveled back to August 30 before he met up with the girl, which explains this clip of him catching the vase like he knew it would fall, and instead of changing it to a suit looking all happy and cute, he's now sad and upset. Instead of getting more involved with the girl, he ends up just giving back her diary and apologizing for having it. The diary acted as a starting and stopping point for them. He then realized he tried to be someone else he wasn't. He tried to follow everything in that diary and realized that only by being true to himself can he continue to move forward. So he stood up after giving her the diary and she didn't try to stop him. Now, there were a lot of things that were left out, and I felt like there were super important keys, but I don't really know which timeline this falls under. At one point when Seokjin went back in time, he was searching for the map of the soul. This was the only hint that he was given, supposedly, and he began to search every bookstore and library. Another important key is the note from August 3, year 22. When the boys brought Seokjin into their old hideout from high school. Quote, memories. What Taehyung called memories were stories that did not mean anything to me, that I had done such things, that there had been such things that happened to me, and that we had done things together, such stories. It could be that those things were true, it felt like they were, but remembering is not the same as understanding or accepting. Experiences are not things you can simply hear or figure out. They are things that have to be rooted in your heart, head, and spirit. Doesn't it sound like Seokjin lost his memory or something?
Потерял воспоминания.
Then Taehyung tries to stop Seokjin from leaving, and they end up getting into a physical fight. All of a sudden, they knock down a wall that they never knew was there in their hideout. On the other side of the wall was a chained cabinet. They opened it and found a notebook. Now, it wasn't just any notebook. It was the diary of Seokjin's father. Which brings us back to the note from June 25th, year 19, when Seokjin noticed the sentence, "Everything started from here," written in the storage room. His father attended the same school as him, and he wondered if his father also came to the same storage room to hide out in. Did Seokjin's father also have the ability to travel back in time? And yep, that's all I have so far for this timeline. I did my best to summarize what I could, but also include the details you needed. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. I mean, this isn't the end, obviously, since BTS will be releasing more notes and more content about the storyline. But if you did enjoy this video, make sure to click that like button and...
Да, какого оно года 19-го? Тут есть BTS Storyline. Короче, да, все мои теории, которые я предполагал, они просто пошли куда-то погулять. Все мимо практически. Да, конечно, мрачновато, это еще мягко сказано. Но тут не было ничего про Fake Love сказано. Это у Ари будет, я знаю. Это мы тоже будем смотреть. Да. Короче, я жду дораму, потому что я чувствую, она прям будет мозговыносящая. Это, очень круто. Ну да, конечно, это вот сюжет с мультивселенной, скажем так, даже. Это не новое. Но, так закрутить ее надо было еще, конечно, постараться. Ну, интересно. Да, конечно, обидно, что практически все мои догадки не оправдались. Я вообще думал в другом направлении, но я хотя бы узнал, кто был за рулем. Это был доставщик. Или кто он там. Обидненько. Я думал, там будет все более замудреннее. Ну, как бы то ни было. Ладненько. Осталась теория от Ари. И на этом мы закончим наше знакомство со вселенной BTS. А чтобы не пропустить, подпишись на канал, потому что уже в следующую пятницу выйдет видосик, где мы узнаем, чем все закончится. На этом все. Спасибо еще раз бустерам, нашим модераторам, чатику, всем, кто комментирует, всем подписчикам. Большое спасибо. На этом все. И всем пока.
불빛도 flashing lights 우리 flashing nights 돌아봐야 해 그냥은 안 돼 시간 지나면 웃겠지만 뭐가 볼 때까지 일단 그냥 달려 괜찮아 네 속은 내가 알아